For some reaction now, we're joined from our Cape Town studio by arms deal activist Terry Crawford-Browne. He was among those who criticised the deal contracts. He believed it was irrational for the government to buy such expensive military hardware when the country was, of course, already in a financial crisis. One of the things, Terry Crawford-Browne, which you have said during the carrying out of the hearings by the Commission, is that the arms deal essentially raped South Africa because of the collusion that took place within the financial systems. Hearing the findings today, what's your reaction to that?
Thank you. The report is very much as expected, but more blatant. You will recall that Mr. Norman Moabi, when he resigned, said that Judge Thirieti had a second agenda to silence the Terry Crawford-Brownes of this world. So that's not, the report is as we expected. You'll also remember that there was a mountain of evidence which the Commission has deliberately left in 2 shipping containers in Pretoria, uninvestigated. The whole premise of the arms deal was if we spent 30 billion, we'd get 110 billion back in offsets that would create 65,000 jobs. Not only did the offsets not materialize, they were simply vehicles to pay bribes. We probably got about 2%, 2.5% were paid as, in the German case, what they called unrefundable loans. But more particularly, which has been the thrust of my opposition to this right throughout, is that it failed Section 217 of the Constitution regarding government procurements, that they must be open, transparent, competitive, and cost-effective. And you'll recall that as far as the BAE contracts were concerned, cost was even taken out of consideration for what Mr. Modise described a visionary approach. So I'm afraid the whole thing has been a farce. And the report just issued has confirmed that the Commission was sadly a whitewash.
Terry, of course, many activists like yourself and those who've been investigating the arms deal say that there is a mountain of evidence, but much of this was not allowed to be heard in the Seriti Commission simply because of the terms of reference. What exactly do you believe officials deliberately kept out of the inquiry process?
Well, for instance, as part of my subpoena, I was entitled to examine the International Offers Negotiating Team and Financial Working Group papers, which were then distilled into what was known as the affordability study. That was part of the subpoena agreement. The Seriti Commission couldn't find those documents. We estimate there were about 17,000 pages of documents which supposedly they couldn't find. A complete farce. Those documents were distilled down into the affordability study, which warned government in 1999 that the whole proposition was reckless, that offsets couldn't be guaranteed, and that the foreign exchange risks were massive. Now, we know the rand has collapsed in the meantime. The arms deal was cost at 625 rand to the dollar. We're now looking at just over 14 rand to the dollar. The costs have been horrendous, but what it has done is to unleash the culture of corruption that is now reflected in, for instance, the Gupta situation and the threat facing the country of being downgraded to junk status.
When we look at the officials that were called in to give evidence throughout the Commission, of course, they include former President Thabo Mbeki, Trevor Manuel, Ronnie Kasrils, and all of them basically, as gave evidence along the same line that it was a rational decision for the country at the time. Do you think that there has been a very deliberate collusion here, given the fact that you're against how the Commission of Inquiry carried out its work?
Yes, as I say, the evidence that was the very cause of its creation, when we took the matter to the Constitutional Court, the President's legal counsel could not rebut that huge volume of evidence against BAE, the German frigate consortium, and the German submarine consortium, which is why the President very reluctantly appointed the Commission of Inquiry. The evidence, for instance, against BAE amounted to 460 boxes and 4.7 million computer pages of evidence. It's huge. Now, as we know from the Panama Papers of 11.5 million pages of documents, that can now be scanned and indexed and so forth. But the Commission chose not to do it, saying it would cost too much to do it. Well, the estimated cost would be about 250,000 rand. When I went to the Commission, its documentation was unbelievably mismanaged. And then people like Henny van Vuren and Andrew Feinstein, Paul Holden, they wanted to interrogate the affordability study, which suddenly, although it has been in the public domain since 2001, had become reclassified. So I'm afraid the mismanagement of the Commission has been essentially to be a whitewash.
Terry, what's next for individuals like yourself who've been trying to get to the bottom of the truth in the arms deal? What's your next move?
Well, there's the prospect of going back to the Constitutional Court in terms of Section 217, because the whole thing was predicated on the idea that you spend 30 billion, you'll get 110 billion back, and that would create 65,000 jobs. And the arms deal failed all those checkpoints. And if, sadly, we find that we have, in fact, exhausted local remedies, there is the prospect of going overseas.
But so in terms of your perspective, the journey still continues. It's not over.
No, it's not over.
All right.
It's far too important an issue. It's far too important an issue to let go.
All right, arms deal activist Terry Crawford-Browne. That's where we'll leave it for this afternoon. As you heard there, the fight is still far from over.